The woman in the Mercedes had exactly 12 minutes before hypothermia would kill her. Terrell Jackson had no way of knowing this as he pulled over in the blizzard, and he definitely didn't know she was about to hand him a check that would change everything. You see, when billionaire Victoria Sterling's car died on that frozen highway, she wasn't just another stranded motorist. Hidden in her briefcase were documents for a $50 million community investment project. And the neighborhood at the top of her list? The exact same streets where Terrell had spent his whole life struggling to make ends meet. But here's what makes this story incredible. Terrell almost didn't stop. His grandmother was waiting at home. His car was barely running. He had every reason to keep driving through that storm and mind his own business. What he did next would save 2 lives, reunite a family, and prove that sometimes the biggest rewards come from the smallest acts of kindness. 5:30 in the morning. The alarm screams through Terrell Jackson's cramped South Side apartment, but he's already awake. He's been staring at the ceiling for 20 minutes, doing the math in his head. Rent's due in 3 days. Grandma's insulin prescription needs refilling. Maya's foster care review is next month, and he still doesn't have the stable housing situation the social worker keeps asking about. 29 years old, and Terrell feels like he's been running uphill his entire life. He rolls out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Grandma Evelyn in the next room. Her breathing sounds better today. The new medication is helping, even if it's eating through their grocery budget. Terrell pulls on his custodial uniform, the same navy blue shirt he's worn to the Millennium Office Tower every morning for 2 years. It's honest work. It pays $11 an hour. It's not enough. In the kitchen, he starts Grandma's coffee and counts out her pills. Diabetes medication, blood pressure pills, the arthritis prescription that costs $60 even with insurance. She's 78 and raised him after his parents died in that car accident 11 years ago. She deserves better than watching every penny, but this is the reality they're living. "Morning, baby." Grandma Evelyn shuffles into the kitchen, her walker scraping against the linoleum. "You eating breakfast today?" "I'm good, Grandma. Got some crackers for later." It's a lie. He's saving the real food for her, but she doesn't need to know that. She gives him that look, the one that says she knows exactly what he's doing. "Terrell, you can't pour from an empty cup." "I'm not empty, just conserving energy." He kisses her forehead and grabs his work bag. "I'll call you at lunch, okay?" The morning shift at Millennium Tower is 4 hours of mopping floors, emptying trash cans, and cleaning bathrooms for people who make more in a week than he sees in 6 months. But Terrell doesn't resent them. He watches how they carry themselves, how they talk about investments and opportunities, and he learns. During his lunch break, he studies business courses on his phone, free online classes from the community college. Someday, he tells himself, someday he'll wear a suit to work instead of coveralls. At noon, he clocks out and drives his ancient Honda to the delivery company. The engine makes a grinding noise that's getting worse every day, but a mechanic costs money he doesn't have. The delivery job pays $15 an hour plus tips, but it means putting 200 miles a day on a car that already has 180,000 on the odometer. Today, he's delivering medical supplies to senior centers across the city. Every address reminds him of Grandma. Every elderly face makes him think about providing better care for the woman who sacrificed everything to raise him and his sister Maya. Maya. The thought hits him like it does every day around 3 p.m. when kids are getting out of school. She should be walking through their front door right now, complaining about homework, asking what's for dinner. Instead, she's in a foster home on the other side of the city because when their parents died, Terrell was 19 with no job, no money, and no way to convince child services he could provide stability. He calls the foster home every Tuesday and Thursday. Maya always sounds happy to hear from him, but there's something in her voice, a distance that wasn't there before. She's 15 now, growing up without him. The social worker says he can apply for custody again when he has stable employment and adequate housing. 2 things that feel impossible when you're working multiple jobs just to survive. By 6 p.m., Terrell's back home helping Grandma with dinner. She insists on cooking even though standing for long periods makes her ankles swell. Tonight it's chicken and rice. Simple, cheap, filling. They eat while watching the news, and she asks about his day like she always does. How are those business classes going? Good. Learning about marketing today. Did you know most small businesses fail because they don't understand their customers? Smart boy. Your daddy would be proud. She pats his hand. You're going to do something special, baby. I can feel it. After dinner, Terrell helps her with her evening medication and gets her settled in front of her favorite TV show. Then he heads to his weekend job, fixing cars in Tommy's garage. It's under-the-table work, $20 an hour, but it's only Friday and Saturday nights. Tommy's teaching him about business, too, in his own way. CT, Tommy says as they work on a transmission together. It's not about being the cheapest. It's about being the most reliable. People will pay extra for someone they trust. Terrell files that advice away with everything else he's learning. Someday, he wants his own shop. Someday, he wants to hire guys from the neighborhood, give them the same chance Tommy gave him. But tonight, as he drives home through the quiet streets at 11 p.m., those dreams feel as distant as the stars. Tomorrow, he'll wake up at 5:30 and do it all over again. 3 jobs, 20-hour days, and still barely enough to keep his head above water. What Terrell doesn't know is that in less than 12 hours, everything will change. Because sometimes the universe puts exactly the right person in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, and all it takes is the courage to stop and help. The radio crackles with another weather warning as Terrell drives through the empty streets. This is emergency broadcasting. All residents advised to avoid travel. Blizzard conditions with wind gusts up to 40 miles per hour. Visibility near zero. If you must travel, keep emergency supplies in your vehicle. Terrell turns the volume down and grips the steering wheel tighter. His Honda's heater is barely working, blowing cold air that fogs up the windshield faster than the defroster can clear it. Every few seconds, he has to lean forward and wipe the glass with his sleeve just to see the road. It's 11:15 p.m., and the storm that started as light snow 6 hours ago has turned into something dangerous. The Weather Service called it a once-in-a-decade blizzard, but Terrell couldn't afford to leave work early. Tommy needed help finishing Mrs. Rodriguez's brake job, and $20 an hour was $20 an hour. Now he's paying for that decision. The streets are buried under 8 inches of snow, with more falling every minute. His route home usually takes 15 minutes, but tonight he's been driving for 40, and he's only halfway there. The Honda's tires slip every time he tries to accelerate, and the engine coughs like it's struggling to breathe in the frigid air. Terrell takes the highway because the side streets are completely impassable. Usually this stretch of I-94 is bumper-to-bumper traffic, but tonight it's a ghost road. Snow swirls across the asphalt like white curtains, and the streetlights create these eerie yellow circles in the darkness. He's thinking about Grandma, hoping she remembered to take her evening pills, when he sees the lights. At first, they're just a dim orange glow through the snow curtain ahead. Probably another abandoned car, he thinks. There have been 3 already, vehicles stuck in drifts with their hazard lights blinking weakly until their batteries died. But as he gets closer, something feels different. The lights are too steady, too bright, and they're coming from the shoulder, not the middle of the road where someone would get stuck. Terrell slows down, his windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the accumulating snow. That's when he sees it. A black Mercedes, pristine except for the snow piling up on its hood. The engine is running. He can see exhaust vapor rising from the tailpipe. But the car isn't moving. The hazard lights flash in a rhythm that seems almost desperate. Terrell's first instinct is to keep driving. This isn't his neighborhood. Rich people have resources he doesn't. They have AAA and roadside assistance and heated parking garages to go home to. Besides, he needs to get home to Grandma. But then he sees movement in the driver's seat. Someone's inside that car. Someone who's been sitting in sub-zero temperatures while their expensive vehicle turned into a very pretty death trap. Terrell pulls over 50 feet ahead of the Mercedes, his Honda sliding slightly as he hits the brakes. The wind hits his car like a physical force, rocking it back and forth. Through his rearview mirror, he can see the other car more clearly now. The driver's side window is cracked open, just a sliver, like someone trying to get fresh air. That's not good. When you're trapped in a car during a blizzard, you keep the windows closed to conserve heat. Opening a window means you're either panicking or you're already showing signs of hypothermia. Terrell sits in his car for 30 seconds, engine running, heater blowing that pathetic stream of lukewarm air. He thinks about Maya, who always told him he cared too much about other people. He thinks about Grandma, who taught him that we're all in this together, baby. He thinks about his parents, who died because no one stopped to help when their car went off the road on a night just like this. His phone shows no signal. Even if he called 911, emergency services aren't running in these conditions. The news said all non-essential vehicles were off the roads until morning. Morning might be too late for whoever's in that Mercedes. Terrell turns off his engine and zips up his work jacket. The wind hits him like a slap when he opens the door, and snow immediately starts accumulating on his shoulders. Each step toward the Mercedes is a battle against the wind, his work boots slipping on the invisible ice beneath the snow. As he gets closer, he can see the figure inside more clearly. An elderly woman wearing what looks like an expensive coat. Her head is tilted back against the headrest, and her eyes are closed. Terrell taps on the passenger window with his knuckle, gentle but firm. The woman's eyes snap open, and for a moment she looks terrified. Then she sees his face, concerned, not threatening, and her expression changes to something like relief. She rolls down the window just enough to speak, and when she does, her voice is shaky but controlled. "Oh, thank goodness. I thought—" She pauses, gathering herself. "My car just died completely. I've been here for almost an hour." What Terrell doesn't know is that this woman has exactly 11 minutes before hypothermia becomes irreversible. What he also doesn't know is that saving her life is about to save his own in ways he never could have imagined. "Ma'am, you can't stay out here." Terrell has to shout over the wind. "This storm's getting worse, and your car's not going to protect you much longer." The woman looks up at him through the crack in her window. Even in the dim light from her dashboard, he can see she's shivering. Her lips have a slight blue tint that makes his stomach clench with worry. "I've been trying to call for help, but—" She holds up her phone, showing no signal bars. "I don't know what happened to my car. It just stopped running completely." "When did it die?" "Maybe an hour ago. I've been running the heater on battery power, but it stopped working about 10 minutes ago." Terrell's heart sinks. An hour in this cold, even inside a car, is dangerous. 10 minutes without heat in sub-zero temperatures could already be causing hypothermia. "Ma'am, I need you to listen to me carefully. My car's not much to look at, but it's warm and it's running. I can give you a ride somewhere safe." She hesitates, and he understands why. He's a stranger in work clothes approaching her expensive car in the middle of a blizzard. But then she looks into his eyes, and something in his expression must convince her. "Are you sure? I don't want to put you at risk." "We're both at risk if we stay out here much longer. Come on." The woman nods and starts gathering her things. Terrell notices she's wearing heels, completely wrong for this weather, and her coat, while expensive-looking, isn't designed for survival conditions like this. "Do you have a bag or anything you need?" "Just my purse and this briefcase." She holds up a leather case that looks like it costs more than Terrell makes in a month. "I can't leave this behind." "No problem. I'll help you carry it." Opening her door against the wind takes both of them pulling from opposite sides. The moment she steps out of the Mercedes, the storm hits her like a wall. She stumbles, and Terrell catches her arm, steadying her. "Easy. I've got you." The walk to his Honda is only 50 feet, but it feels like a mile. The woman's heels keep sliding on the hidden ice, and Terrell finds himself practically carrying her weight. Snow stings their faces like needles, and the wind cuts through their clothes like it's nothing. "Almost there!" he shouts, guiding her toward the passenger door of his beat-up Honda. When he opens the door, Warm air spills out. Not much, but enough to make them both grateful. He helps her into the passenger seat, then goes around to put her briefcase in the back. "I'm sorry about the car," he says as he gets behind the wheel. "The heater's not great, but it's warmer than outside." "Don't apologize. This is perfect." She's already stopped shivering as violently. "I'm Victoria, by the way. Victoria Sterling." "Terrell Jackson. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Sterling, though I wish it was under better circumstances." "Please, just Victoria. And thank you. I honestly thought—" She trails off, but they both know what she was thinking. Terrell adjusts the vents to blow directly toward her and cranks the heat as high as it will go. "Where can I take you? Do you live nearby?" "Downtown, but honestly, anywhere warm would be fine. I don't want you driving in this if it's not safe." "There's a 24-hour diner about 3 miles from here. Good heat, good coffee. We can wait there until the storm passes or until a tow truck can help with your car." As they drive, Terrell keeps the speed under 20 miles per hour. The Honda handles better than the Mercedes would have in this snow. It's lighter and the tires have more tread, but visibility is still almost zero. "So what were you doing out in this storm?" he asks, making conversation to keep them both calm. "I was coming back from a business dinner, got turned around somewhere and ended up on the highway when the worst of it hit." She pauses. "What about you? Most people are smart enough to be home right now." "I work weekends at an auto shop. Couldn't leave until we finished a job." He doesn't mention that he couldn't afford to leave early, but something in his tone suggests it. "3 jobs?" Victoria asks gently. Terrell glances at her, surprised. "How did you—" "You mentioned custodial work earlier, delivery driving, and now the auto shop. That's a lot of work for one person." "Yeah, well, family needs what family needs." He doesn't elaborate, but Victoria nods like she understands. They drive in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the Honda's engine working hard against the wind. The diner's neon sign appears through the snow like a beacon, red letters spelling Rosie's with half the bulbs burned out, but it's the most beautiful sight either of them has seen all night. Terrell parks as close to the entrance as possible and turns off the engine. "Ready to make another run for it? With you leading the way?" "Absolutely." The diner is almost empty, just a tired-looking waitress and a trucker nursing coffee at the counter. But it's warm and bright, and when they shake the snow off their clothes, Victoria actually smiles for the first time since he found her. "Table for 2? The waitress looks curious about the unlikely pair, Terrell in his work clothes and Victoria in her expensive coat, but she's friendly enough. "Please, and could we get some coffee right away? She's been stuck in the cold for a while." "Of course, honey. Y'all sit anywhere you like." They choose a booth near the window where they can watch the storm. Victoria wraps her hands around her coffee mug like it's a lifeline, and gradually, the color returns to her cheeks. "I can't thank you enough," she says. "You didn't have to stop. Most people wouldn't have." "Most people would have," Terrell replies automatically. "You just got unlucky with the timing." Victoria studies his face. "No, I think I got very lucky with the timing, and very lucky that you were the one who found me." Something in her tone makes him look up from his coffee. She's watching him with an intensity that has nothing to do with gratitude, almost like she's trying to memorize his face, or like she's figuring something out. But before he can ask what she's thinking, the lights flicker, and they both turn to look out the window. The storm is getting worse, not better. They're going to be here for a while. What Terrell doesn't know is that Victoria Sterling isn't just grateful for the rescue. She's already wondering if the man who saved her life might be exactly the person she's been looking for to help her save an entire community. But first, she needs to know who he really is. The storm rages outside Rosie's diner for 3 hours. 3 hours of conversation that changes everything, though neither of them realizes it yet. Victoria learns that Terrell volunteers at the community center, teaching kids basic car maintenance. Terrell learns that Victoria grew up in a neighborhood not unlike his own before her family moved when she was 12. They talk about family, responsibility, and the weight of taking care of people you love. By 2:30 a.m., the snow finally stops falling. The wind dies down to occasional gusts, and the emergency radio announces that main roads are being cleared for essential vehicles. I should get you home, Terrell says, though part of him doesn't want this conversation to end. Victoria is different from what he expected. No condescension, no pity, just genuine interest in his life and thoughtful questions about his goals. Are you sure it's safe to drive? The highway will be plowed by now, and honestly, I need to get back to my grandmother. She worries when I'm out too late. Victoria nods, understanding immediately. Of course. Let me just... She reaches into her designer purse and pulls out an expensive leather wallet. Please, let me pay you for gas, for your time, for the risk you took helping me. She pulls out several $100 bills, more money than Terrell makes in a week, and holds them across the table. Terrell looks at the money for exactly 2 seconds, then gently pushes her hand back. I can't take that. Please. You saved my life. You used your gas, your time. Ma'am. Victoria. I helped because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted payment. His voice is quiet but firm. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, they wouldn't have. And even if they would have, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be compensated. Terrell shakes his head. My grandmother raised me to help people because they need help, not because there's something in it for me. If I take your money, then I didn't really help you. I just did a job. Victoria stares at him for a long moment. In her world, everything has a price. Everyone wants something, but this young man is refusing hundreds of dollars after risking his safety for a stranger. Then at least let me give you my business card, in case you ever need anything. She reaches into her purse again and pulls out a small silver card holder. The cards inside are thick, expensive cardstock with raised lettering. She writes something on the back of one before handing it to him. Victoria Sterling, Sterling Foundation, Terrell reads aloud, then glances at what she wrote on the back, her personal cell phone number. What kind of foundation? Community development. We work with neighborhoods that need investment. She pauses, choosing her words carefully. I meant what I said about your business ideas, Terrell. You have good instincts. Terrell slips the card into his wallet without really processing what Sterling Foundation might mean. He's focused on getting Victoria home safely and getting back to Grandma. Ready to brave the cold one more time? The drive to Victoria's downtown address takes 40 minutes on the slowly clearing roads. Terrell's Honda handles the conditions well, but he drives carefully, both hands on the wheel, checking every few seconds to make sure Victoria is warm enough. When they pull up to her building, Terrell's eyes widen slightly. It's one of those luxury high-rises with a doorman and valet parking, the kind of place he's only seen in movies. This is you? This is me. Victoria gathers her briefcase and purse. Terrell, I want you to promise me something. What's that? Promise me you'll call that number I gave you, not for money, not for charity, but because I think we might be able to help each other. Before he can ask what she means, she's out of the car. The doorman appears instantly, greeting her by name, holding an umbrella over her head as she walks to the entrance. She turns back once, waves through the glass doors and mouths, "Call me." Terrell sits in his idling Honda for a moment, watching her disappear into the marble lobby. Something about this whole night feels significant, but he can't put his finger on what. He drives home through the quiet, snow-covered streets, thinking about Victoria's intensity when she said they might be able to help each other. But mostly, he's thinking about getting home to Grandma and catching a few hours of sleep before his morning shift. What he doesn't know is that Victoria Sterling is already upstairs in her penthouse, making phone calls despite the late hour, putting a plan in motion that will change his life forever. Terrell gets home at 3:45 a.m. to find Grandma Evelyn waiting up in her recliner, a blanket pulled up to her chin and the local news playing softly on TV. There's my boy, she says, relief evident in her voice. I was worried sick about you driving in that storm. I'm fine, Grandma. Sorry I'm so late. He kisses her forehead and helps her to her bedroom. Had to help someone whose car broke down. In this weather? Lord have mercy. You and that big heart of yours. She pats his cheek. Tell me about it in the morning, baby. You look exhausted. After getting Grandma settled, Terrell sits at their small kitchen table and pulls out Victoria's business card. Under the fluorescent light, he can see details he missed in the diner. The paper is thick, expensive. The logo is embossed gold. Sterling Foundation is printed in elegant script below her name. He flips the card over and looks at the phone number she wrote by hand. Her handwriting is precise, confident, the handwriting of someone used to making important decisions. Terrell pulls out his phone and searches Sterling Foundation Chicago. What he finds makes him sit up straighter. Headlines scroll past. Sterling Foundation announces $20 million Southside investment. Community development project transforms Detroit neighborhood. Billionaire philanthropist Victoria Sterling focuses on urban renewal. Billionaire. Terrell stares at his phone screen. The woman he pulled out of that Mercedes. The woman who sat across from him in Rosie's diner talking about family and community like they were old friends, is worth over $2 billion. He scrolls through more articles. Photos of Victoria at charity galas, shaking hands with mayors, cutting ribbons at community centers. But the woman in these pictures looks different somehow. More formal, more distant. Not like the person who thanked him 3 times for buying her a cup of coffee. One headline catches his attention. Sterling Foundation seeks community partners for next major investment. The article is dated just 2 weeks ago. Terrell's phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Made it home safely. Thank you again for everything. Victoria. She must have gotten his number from when he called her phone to make sure it was working while they waited at the diner. But something about getting a text from a billionaire at 4 a.m. feels surreal. He types back. Glad you're safe. Drive careful when you get your car back. Her response comes immediately. Will do. Don't forget what I said about calling that number. Terrell looks at the business card again, then at the search results on his phone. Victoria Sterling doesn't just run a foundation. She's one of the most powerful people in Chicago. And for some reason, she wants him to call her. But why? What could someone like him possibly offer someone like her? Uptown, in her penthouse office, Victoria Sterling sits surrounded by community development files and demographic reports. On her desk is a photo from tonight, a security camera image from the diner showing her and Terrell in conversation. She's not looking at the photo, though. She's looking at a detailed map of Chicago's South Side, with one neighborhood circled in red. Terrell's neighborhood. 3 days pass before Terrell works up the courage to call the number on Victoria's card. He's sitting in his Honda during his lunch break from the delivery job, parked outside a senior center on the South Side. The morning's route took him through some of Chicago's wealthiest neighborhoods, Lincoln Park, Gold Coast, River North, and the contrast with his own area is impossible to ignore. Every pothole he dodged, every boarded-up storefront he passed, every group of teenagers hanging around because there's nowhere else to go. It all feels more pronounced after meeting Victoria. She lives in a world of marble lobbies and doormen, while he lives in a world of broken streetlights and sirens. But her text message from this morning changed something. Terrell, I'm in your neighborhood today. Coffee? Your neighborhood. Not the South Side or that area. Your neighborhood. Like she knows exactly where he lives. His phone rings before he can call her. Victoria's number. Terrell? I hope I'm not bothering you at work. No, I'm on lunch break. You said you were in the neighborhood? I'm at the Sterling Community Center on 47th Street. Do you know it? Terrell's grip tightens on the phone. The Sterling Community Center. He drives past it every day. It's 3 blocks from his apartment. The same community center where he volunteers on weekends, teaching kids basic auto repair. Yeah, I know it. Wait. That's your foundation center? One of them. Could you meet me here? There's something I need to show you. 20 minutes later, Terrell walks into the community center he's been volunteering at for 2 years, seeing it with completely different eyes. The Sterling Foundation logo is everywhere, on the basketball court, the computer lab, the job training classrooms. How had he never noticed? Victoria is waiting in the main lobby, but she's not alone. She's talking to Marcus Williams, the center director, and 2 other people in business suits. When she sees Terrell, her face lights up. "Terrell, thank you for coming." She turns to the group. "Everyone, this is the young man I was telling you about." Marcus looks confused. "You two know each other?" "We met a few nights ago," Victoria says carefully. "Terrell, could we talk privately for a few minutes?" She leads him to a small conference room and closes the door. On the table are dozens of documents, maps, architectural drawings, and financial projections. Terrell recognizes some of the street names immediately. They're all from his neighborhood. "Victoria, what is all this?" She takes a deep breath. "Terrell, I wasn't entirely honest with you the other night about why I was out in that storm." "What do you mean?" "I was coming back from a city planning meeting. A meeting about this." She gestures to the documents on the table. The Sterling Foundation is planning a $50 million investment in community development, job training, small business loans, affordable housing renovation, family support services. Terrell's eyes scan the papers. Maps of his neighborhood, lists of local businesses, demographics reports, financial projections. "Okay, but what does this have to do with me?" Victoria sits down across from him. "For the past 6 months, we've been looking for the right community liaison, someone who understands the neighborhood, who people trust, who can bridge the gap between foundation resources and community needs." And 3 nights ago, you proved you're exactly who we've been looking for." Terrell stares at her. "You're telling me that helping you in the blizzard was some kind of job interview?" "No!" Victoria's response is immediate and forceful. "Terrell, I had no idea who you were that night. But when I got home and started thinking about our conversation, about your character, your insight into community needs, your natural leadership," she pauses. "I had my assistant do some research." She slides a folder across the table. Inside are printouts, his employment records, his volunteer work at the community center, testimonials from neighbors, even records of his custody case with Maya. "You researched me. I had to know if what I saw that night was real. And it is, Terrell. You're everything this project needs." Terrell's mind races. "The community center where I volunteer, Bo. We built it 2 years ago. You've been volunteering at one of our facilities without knowing it. The kids I teach auto repair to are part of our youth development program. The neighborhood improvement meetings I attend, we've been funding those initiatives." Terrell sits back in his chair, overwhelmed. "So you've been watching me. For how long?" "No, not watching. Your name came up in community feedback surveys. People kept mentioning that young man, Terrell, who helps everyone. But I never connected it to you until after the blizzard." Victoria leans forward. "Terrell, I'm offering you a position as Community Development Director. $85,000 a year plus benefits. Your job would be to help us make sure this $50 million investment actually serves the people who live here." "Why me?" "Because you stopped to help a stranger in a blizzard without expecting anything in return. Because you refused payment for doing the right thing. Because when I asked people in your neighborhood about you, they all said the same thing. Terrell's one of the good ones. He cares about this place." Terrell looks at the architectural drawings spread across the table. New job training facilities, a small business incubator, renovated housing, all in his neighborhood, all designed to create opportunities for people like him. "There's something else," Victoria says quietly. "The foundation has a family support division. We help with custody cases, housing stability, medical expenses for dependents. Maya. We could help you bring your sister home, Terrell, legally, properly, with all the support services the court requires." For the first time in 11 years, Terrell Jackson sees a path forward that doesn't involve working 3 jobs just to survive. But more than that, he sees a chance to lift up everyone around him. What would I have to do? Victoria smiles. Help me save your neighborhood the same way you saved me. Terrell stares at the documents spread across the conference table, his mind struggling to process what Victoria is offering. $85,000 a year, family support services, a chance to bring Maya home, a chance to transform his entire neighborhood. I need you to understand what you're asking me, he says slowly. You want me to be the face of a $50 million project. I clean office buildings, Victoria. I deliver medical supplies. I fix cars on weekends. And you volunteer at this community center every Saturday morning, teaching teenagers skills that could change their lives. You attend neighborhood improvement meetings even though you work 3 jobs. You know every business owner on 3 different blocks. Victoria's voice is steady, confident. Terrell, you've been preparing for this job your entire life without knowing it. She slides another folder across the table. This is our family support package. Legal assistance for custody cases, housing support, medical coverage for dependents, educational assistance for children transitioning from foster care. Terrell opens the folder with trembling hands. The custody assistance program alone would cover everything the court requires: stable housing, steady employment, family counseling services. Everything he's been working toward for years, laid out in official foundation letterhead. Maya could be home in 4 months, Victoria continues. Our legal team has reviewed cases like yours. With proper representation and documented stability, the reunification process is straightforward. What's the catch? Victoria appreciates his directness. The catch is that this position requires everything you have: full-time commitment, public visibility, community responsibility. You'd be making decisions that affect thousands of people. You'd be the bridge between a billionaire foundation and families just trying to survive. She stands and walks to the window overlooking the basketball court where teenagers are playing pickup games. You'd also be betting your future on me, on us, on the belief that this foundation can actually make a difference instead of just making us feel good about ourselves. Why should I trust you? Because you shouldn't. Victoria turns back to face him. You should visit our other sites. Talk to the community directors in Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland. Ask them what it's really like to work with us. Ask them about the failures, the bureaucracy, the politics. Ask them if they'd do it again. She pulls out her phone and shows him a video. On screen, a young black woman is speaking at what looks like a city council meeting. That's Keisha Johnson in Detroit, community director for 3 years. She'll tell you that we're not perfect, that we make mistakes, that sometimes foundation priorities conflict with community needs. She'll also tell you that her neighborhood unemployment rate dropped from 38% to 12%. Terrell watches the video, noting how confidently the woman speaks, how she commands respect in the room. What would my actual day-to-day look like? Victoria sits back down, her demeanor shifting to pure business. Month 1, community listening tours. You'd spend 40 hours a week talking to residents, business owners, and community leaders, understanding what people actually need versus what we think they need. She flips to a detailed timeline. Month 2, program design. Working with our policy team to customize our standard offerings to your neighborhood's specific challenges. Month 3 through 6, implementation. Hiring local staff, opening the job training center, launching the small business loan program, beginning housing renovations. And after that? After that, you run a multi-million-dollar community development operation. You have a staff of 15, an annual budget of $8 million, and the responsibility to prove that community-led investment actually works. Terrell sits quietly for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what she's describing. What about my current jobs? You'd give your 2 weeks' notice. We'll cover any lost income during the transition. What about Grandma's medical expenses? Full family medical coverage starting day 1. Her current doctors, her medications, any specialists she needs. What about Maya's education when she comes home? Tutoring support, college preparation programs, full scholarship fund for higher education. Victoria leans forward. Terrell, I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a career, a chance to build something lasting in your own community. And if I fail, then we both fail. But if you succeed, she gestures toward the window again. Those kids playing basketball could have job training programs that lead to real careers. Their parents could access small business loans to start the enterprises they've been dreaming about. Their grandparents could live in renovated apartments with proper heating and modern appliances. Terrell thinks about Mrs. Rodriguez from his block, who's been trying to expand her catering business for 5 years but can't get a loan. About Tommy's nephew, who's brilliant with engines but dropped out of high school because his family needed income. About his own grandmother, rationing her medication because it's too expensive. How do I know you won't pull funding if the project doesn't meet your expectations? Because we're not just investing money, we're investing in reputation. If this project fails, it reflects on me personally, on the foundation's credibility, on our ability to do this work anywhere else. Victoria slides the employment contract across the table. But more than that, Terrell, after spending 3 hours with you in a diner, watching how you treat people, listening to how you think about community, I believe you won't let it fail. Terrell picks up the contract, noting the salary figure, the benefits package, the performance benchmarks. Everything he's worked toward for years, condensed into 12 pages of legal language. When do you need an answer? The city council votes on our zoning permits next Friday. If you're going to do this, we need to move fast. And if I say yes? 6 months later, the transformation is undeniable. The old vacant lot on 47th and Martin Luther King Drive, where teenagers used to hang out because there was nowhere else to go, now houses the Sterling Workforce Development Center. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, you can see welding stations, computer labs, and automotive training bays buzzing with activity. Terrell walks through the center every morning at 7 a.m., checking in with instructors and students. Today he stops at the automotive bay where Marcus Thompson, the same kid who used to skip school, is installing a transmission under Tommy's supervision. Tommy now works full-time as the center's automotive instructor, making twice what he earned at his old garage. How's he doing? Terrell asks. Kid's got natural talent, Tommy grins. Give him 6 more weeks, he'll be ready for that apprenticeship at the Ford plant. The numbers tell the story better than words. In 6 months, the Workforce Center has graduated 127 people from various programs. 118 of them found employment within 30 days, earning an average of $18.50 per hour. For a neighborhood where the median household income was $31,000, these aren't just jobs, they're pathways to middle-class stability. Down the street, the small business incubator occupies a renovated storefront that used to house a check-cashing place. Mrs. Rodriguez's catering company now operates out of a commercial kitchen here, employing 6 people and catering events across the South Side. The Sterling Foundation's microloan program gave her the $15,000 she needed to buy professional equipment and hire help. Terrell helped me understand the business plan requirements, she tells a local news reporter doing a story on the neighborhood's transformation. But more than that, he believed in my dream when the banks wouldn't even listen. The housing renovation program has touched 78 apartment units so far, prioritizing longtime residents like Grandma Evelyn's friend, Mrs. Washington, who's lived on the same block for 40 years. Her new apartment has central air conditioning, updated plumbing, and a bathroom designed for seniors with mobility issues. The rent remains the same, affordable housing that's actually affordable. But it's the family success stories that make Terrell's eyes well up with pride. Maya has been home for 4 months now, living in their new 3-bedroom apartment just 6 blocks from their old place. She's thriving at the neighborhood high school, where the Sterling Foundation's after-school program provides tutoring and college prep. Last week, she told Terrell she wants to study urban planning in college. I want to help design communities like you're doing, she said over dinner, but maybe focus on parks and recreational spaces. Grandma Evelyn's health has improved dramatically since gaining access to better medical care through Terrell's employee benefits. Her diabetes is well controlled, her arthritis pain is manageable, and she's started volunteering at the community center's senior programs. My grandson is helping save this neighborhood, she tells anyone who will listen. But really, this neighborhood saved him right back. The ripple effects extend beyond individual success stories. Local crime rates have dropped 22% as more young people engage in workforce programs instead of street activities. 3 new businesses have opened independently: a barber shop, a daycare center, and a small grocery store, drawn by the increased foot traffic and economic activity. The Sterling Foundation's model has attracted national attention. Delegations from foundations in Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Oakland have visited to study their community-led approach. Terrell has spoken at conferences in Washington, D.C. and New York, sharing insights about authentic community investment. The secret isn't the money, he tells audiences. It's listening to people who actually live in these neighborhoods and trusting them to know what they need. Victoria watches these presentations with pride that goes beyond professional satisfaction. She's found something she didn't expect when she started this project: a genuine friendship with someone whose perspective challenges and enriches her understanding of community development. "You've taught me more about effective philanthropy than my MBA did," she tells Terrell after his latest speaking engagement. The Sterling Southside project has become the Foundation's flagship initiative. City council members who initially questioned the investment now point to it as a model for public-private partnerships. Property values have increased modestly, enough to build equity for homeowners, but not enough to displace long-time residents. Most importantly, the community has embraced the changes because they were designed with community input from day one. Terrell's weekly listening sessions ensure that programs adapt to actual needs rather than foundation assumptions. As he walks home each evening, passing familiar faces who now have new opportunities, Terrell reflects on how much has changed since that blizzard night. He stopped to help one person and ended up helping hundreds. But the most powerful change is still to come, in a moment that will prove kindness creates endless cycles of opportunity. 1 year later, Chicago gets hit by another blizzard. Terrell is driving home from a city council meeting where the Sterling Foundation just received approval for their second Southside development project. Maya is in the passenger seat. She's 17 now, volunteering as his assistant on community outreach programs during winter break from her senior year. "Dad would be proud," Maya says, using the name she's started calling him since moving back home. "You've become exactly who he always said you'd be." The radio crackles with familiar warnings. Travel not recommended. Emergency shelters open. Stay off the roads unless absolutely necessary. But this time, Terrell is driving a reliable car with good heat and new tires. The Foundation provides a vehicle allowance for community directors. That's when Maya spots the hazard lights through the snow. "Terrell, look." She points ahead to where a car sits motionless on the shoulder. "Should we stop?" Terrell pulls over without hesitation. Through the swirling snow, they can see it's an older sedan with 3 people inside: a young father, his wife, and what looks like a toddler in a car seat. "Stay in the car where it's warm," Terrell tells Maya. "I'll check on them." The young father rolls down his window as Terrell approaches. "Man, thank God you stopped. Our engine just died, and my son, he's only 2, and it's so cold." "I've got you. My car's warm, and we can give you a ride to safety." As they help transfer the family, baby, diaper bag, and all, Maya watches her brother with admiration. This is who he's always been, she realizes. The Foundation didn't change his character. It just gave him the resources to help on a bigger scale. At the emergency shelter, the same community center where Terrell now works, the young father tries to offer gas money. "I can't take that," Terrell says with a smile. "Just pass it forward when you get the chance." The father looks confused. "Pass what forward?" "Help. Someday you'll see someone who needs what you can offer. And when you do, you'll stop. That's how this works." As they drive home through the quiet, snow-covered streets, Maya asks, Do you ever think about that night? The night you met Victoria? Every day. But not because it changed my life. Terrell glances at his sister. Brilliant, confident, home where she belongs. I think about it because it reminded me that the best things happen when you forget about yourself long enough to see someone else. They pull into their driveway. Through the window, they can see Grandma Evelyn waiting up for them, healthy and happy in her warm apartment. Besides, Terrell adds, saving Victoria wasn't really about her. It was about everyone we could save together. Maya nods, understanding. Same reason we stopped tonight. Exactly. Because that's who we are. That's who this neighborhood taught us to be. Terrell's story proves that kindness isn't just about the moment, it's about the movement that follows. When he stopped in that blizzard, he didn't just save Victoria's life. He opened a door to transform an entire community, reunite his family, and create opportunities for hundreds of neighbors who needed someone to believe in them. Every day, we pass people who need help. A stranded motorist, someone struggling with groceries, a neighbor facing hard times. Your act of kindness could be the beginning of something bigger than you can imagine. Victoria had resources, but she needed Terrell's heart to show her how to use them. You have something unique to offer too. Your compassion, your perspective, your willingness to see potential in people others overlook. What if the person you help today becomes the partner who helps you change the world? Share this story if it moved you. Because somewhere, someone is waiting for their blizzard moment, when a stranger's kindness changes everything. Like and subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories that prove when we lift each other up, we all rise together. The billionaire thought he was buying entertainment. He had no idea he was about to get schooled. I said, play something. Marcus Webb's fist slammed against the marble table, crystal glasses jumping like startled birds. Every conversation in the five-star restaurant died. The waitress he'd cornered, Maya, her name tag reading like an accusation, stood frozen beside the concert grand piano. Webb's friends laughed. Cruel, sharp sounds that cut through designer silence. Come on, Marcus, one called out. Make her dance, too. Maya's hands trembled as she approached the bench. But wait, why were her fingers moving like that? Like they already knew these keys? The Steinway waited. $97,000 of German precision, about to become a weapon neither Webb nor his audience could imagine. Maya sat down, adjusted the bench with the kind of precision that should have been their first warning. The silence before the storm was about to shatter everything they thought they knew. 3 hours earlier, Maya had been invisible. That's how she preferred it at Lumiere, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant where a single bottle of wine cost more than her monthly rent. She moved through the dining room like a ghost in black slacks and white shirt, refilling water glasses for people who'd never worked a day in their lives. Maya had perfected the art of being seen, but not noticed. Smile politely. Make no sudden movements. Don't let them catch you listening when they discuss their third homes or their children's trust funds. But Maya always listened. Not to their money talk to the background music floating from the restaurant's concert grand. Tonight, it was Chopin. Nocturne in E-flat major. The hired pianist was competent but soulless, hitting every note while missing every emotion. Maya's fingers twitched involuntarily against her serving tray. She knew that piece. Had performed it at Carnegie Hall during her Juilliard senior recital, back when her biggest worry was whether her parents could afford the plane ticket from California to hear her play. That was 18 months ago, before the student loans came due, before her classical performance degree proved as worthless as everyone had warned, before reality forced her to trade Rachmaninoff for rent money. Miss! Miss! A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. Maya turned to see a woman in diamonds waving an empty champagne flute like a weapon. We've been waiting forever for refills. Of course. My apologies. Maya's training kicked in. The conservatory had taught her more than music. It had taught her how to perform under pressure, how to maintain composure when everything was falling apart. Skills that proved surprisingly useful in the service industry. She glided toward the wine station, past tables of tech moguls and real estate titans, past conversations about market volatility and yacht maintenance. The pianist transitioned to Debussy, but he was rushing the tempo, missing the subtle poetry that made Claire de Lune breathe. Maya bit her tongue. In her old life, she would have gently corrected him. In this life, she bit her tongue and poured champagne. "Maya!" Sergio, the floor manager, appeared at her elbow. "Table 12 needs attention. The Webb party." His voice carried a warning she'd learned to recognize. "Difficult customer. Handle with care. Don't make waves." Maya looked across the dining room to table 12. Marcus Webb sat at the center like a king holding court, surrounded by 5 other men in expensive suits. Webb's laugh was too loud, his gestures too broad, his voice carrying across the restaurant like he owned not just his table, but the entire space. New money, Maya diagnosed. The kind that screamed its presence because it was still insecure about belonging. She'd served his type before. Tech billionaires who'd struck it rich young and never learned manners. They treated restaurants like their personal playgrounds and staff like entertainment. Webb was worse than most. She'd watched him send back 3 courses just to watch the chef scramble, had seen him make the sommelier recite the wine list twice before ordering the most expensive bottle to teach him respect. Maya approached table 12 with practiced caution. Webb was in the middle of a story, gesturing wildly with a fork loaded with Wagyu beef. "So I told the board, either you take my offer or I build my own company and destroy you." 3 weeks later, they called me back, begging. His friends laughed on cue, the kind of forced appreciation that money buys but never earns. "Gentlemen," Maya said softly, stopping at Webb's shoulder, "how are we enjoying everything this evening?" Webb barely glanced at her. "Wine's getting warm. Fix it." He didn't say please, didn't say thank you, didn't acknowledge she was human. Maya reached for the bottle in the ice bucket, checking the temperature. Still perfectly chilled, but she'd learned not to argue with men like Webb. She adjusted the ice anyway, buying herself time to escape. But as she worked, the background music shifted. The pianist began Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, and immediately botched the opening. Maya's hand froze on the wine bottle. He was playing it like a march instead of a meditation, destroying one of the most delicate pieces ever written. Her reaction was almost imperceptible. A slight tightening around her eyes. A barely audible intake of breath. But Webb caught it. "Something wrong, sweetheart?" His voice carried a dangerous amusement. "You look like someone stepped on your cat." His friends turned their attention to Maya, predators sensing wounded prey. "No, sir, everything's fine." Maya's voice stayed level, professional. But her mistake was glancing toward the piano, toward the massacre happening in 3/4 time. Webb followed her gaze. His smile turned calculating. "Oh, you're a music lover. How cultured." The word dripped with sarcasm. "Tell me, what do you think of our entertainment tonight?" Maya felt the trap closing around her. Every instinct screamed at her to deflect, to escape, to maintain her invisibility. But the music god, the way he was butchering Beethoven, "He's very enthusiastic," she managed. Webb's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Enthusiastic! Did you hear that, boys? Our waitress here is a music critic." The table erupted in cruel laughter. Other diners began to notice the commotion, turning to watch the show. "I bet you know all about music," Webb continued, his voice rising. "What is it they say about people in your position? Failed dreams and all that?" Maya's composure cracked just slightly. Webb had found her pressure point and was pressing hard. "I should check on my other tables." "No, no, no." Webb's hand shot out, not quite touching her but blocking her escape. "You started this conversation. Finish it. What's wrong with the piano player?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Maya could feel every eye in the restaurant turning toward them. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. She had two choices: walk away and let him win, or step into the ring and fight back. But with what weapons? She was a waitress with student debt and a useless degree. He was a billionaire with an audience and nothing to lose. Maya took a breath, made her choice. "If you really want to know," she said quietly, "he's destroying everything beautiful about that piece." Webb's smile turned predatory. He'd found his entertainment for the evening. The silence at table 12 stretched like a held breath. Webb leaned back in his chair, studying Maya with the focused attention of a cat watching a mouse. His friends sensed blood in the water and moved closer, forming a circle of expensive suits and cruel anticipation. "Destroying it, you say?" Webb's voice carried across the restaurant. Other conversations died as diners turned to watch the show. That's a strong word from someone who serves soup for a living. The insult landed exactly as intended. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but years of classical training had taught her something Webb couldn't buy: discipline under pressure. "I apologize if I overstepped," she began. "Oh, you did." Webb cut her off, savoring every syllable. "But now I'm curious. Since you're such an expert, why don't you tell us what he should be playing?" His friends chuckled, cruel sounds that echoed off the crystal chandeliers. Maya glanced around the room. 30 tables of New York's elite, all watching her humiliation unfold like dinner theater. The pianist had moved on to some generic background music, but the damage was done. Webb had her cornered, and they both knew it. "I'm sure you're very busy people," Maya tried again. "Not too busy for education," Webb interrupted. "See, boys, this is what's wrong with America. Everyone thinks they're entitled to opinions about things they don't understand." He gestured broadly, playing to his audience. "Our server here probably took one music appreciation class at community college and thinks she knows better than a professional pianist." Maya's jaw tightened. Community college. The assumption cut deeper than he knew, but not for the reasons he imagined. She thought of her acceptance letter to Juilliard, the full scholarship that had made her parents cry with pride. She thought of her senior recital, the standing ovation from professors who'd seen true talent. She thought of everything she'd lost when the real world came calling. "Actually," she said quietly, Let me guess." Webb wrote over her words. "You wanted to be a professional musician but couldn't cut it, so now you're bitter about everyone who actually made it." His voice carried perfect cruelty, each word calculated to inflict maximum damage. "That's why you're working here instead of Carnegie Hall, right, sweetheart?" The mention of Carnegie Hall hit like a physical blow. Maya had performed there, had felt that legendary acoustics wrap around her Rachmaninoff like a living thing, had stood on that stage and known for 18 perfect minutes that she was exactly where she belonged. But Webb couldn't know that. To him, she was just another failed dreamer serving drinks to her betters. Just another cautionary tale about reaching too high. "I think," Webb continued, warming to his theme, "our little music critic needs to learn some humility. What do you think, boys? Should we give her a chance to put her money where her mouth is?" The table erupted in agreement, voices overlapping in cruel harmony. "Marcus, you're terrible," one of his friends laughed. "But I love where this is going." "Make her sing," another called out. "Karaoke night." No, no, no. Webb held up a hand, his eyes glittering with malicious inspiration. "Something better. Much better." He stood slowly, commanding the attention of the entire restaurant. Conversations died table by table as diners turned to watch the spectacle. "Ladies and gentlemen," Webb announced, his voice carrying to every corner of Lumiere, "we have a treat tonight. Our server here is apparently a musical expert who thinks our pianist isn't up to her standards." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Some diners looked uncomfortable, but no one moved to stop what was happening. Maya felt the walls closing in. Every face in the restaurant was turned toward her, waiting for the show to begin. She thought about walking away, about maintaining her dignity and her job. But Webb's words echoed in her head. Couldn't cut it. Community college. Failed dreamer. Each assumption was wrong. Each insult missed its mark. But together, they formed a picture she recognized, the way the world saw her now. A waitress with delusions. A nobody with opinions above her station. "So here's what we're going to do," Webb continued, his voice rising with theatrical flair. "Since our critic here knows so much about music, she's going to demonstrate proper technique. Right here, right now, on our beautiful Steinway." He gestured toward the concert grand like a game show host revealing the grand prize. The pianist, confused and defensive, stopped playing. The restaurant fell silent except for the soft clink of silverware and the whisper of expensive fabric as every head turned toward table 12. Maya stood frozen, caught between dignity and desperation, between truth and survival. Webb's trap was perfect refuse and prove she was all talk, accept and risk exposure that could change everything. But as she looked at that piano, something stirred in her chest. Something that had been sleeping for 18 months, buried under rejection letters and financial reality. Something that remembered the weight of keys under her fingers and the magic of making music breathe. Webb was still talking, still performing for his audience, but Maya was no longer listening. She was looking at the Steinway, at $97,000 of precision and possibility, and for the first time since arriving in New York, she was remembering who she used to be, who she still was, underneath the uniform and the student debt and the careful invisibility. The question was she brave enough to let them see? Maya's silence stretched for exactly 7 seconds. 7 seconds that felt like 7 years, 7 lifetimes, 7 chances to choose a different path. But Webb wasn't patient enough for introspection. "What's the matter, sweetheart?" His voice dripped mock concern. "Stage fright? Or are you finally realizing you're in over your head?" The restaurant held its collective breath. 30 tables of Manhattan's elite watching a working-class woman get put in her place. Maya looked at the piano again. The Steinway Model D, she recognized now. Concert grand. The same model she'd trained on at Juilliard, the same instrument that had carried her through Chopin and Rachmaninoff and Bach. Her fingers tingled with muscle memory, 18 months of suppressed instinct suddenly flooding back. "I don't usually," she began. "Of course you don't usually," Webb interrupted, his friends laughing on cue. "Usually you just serve drinks and keep your opinions to yourself. But tonight's different, isn't it?" He stepped closer, invading her space with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. Maya felt something shift inside her chest. A door she'd kept locked for 18 months, sealed shut with rejection letters and unpaid bills, began to creak open. She thought of her parents, immigrants who'd worked double shifts to pay for her lessons. She thought of her teacher, Professor Martinez, who'd believed in her talent even when she'd stopped believing in herself. "Fine," she said quietly. Webb blinked. He'd expected her to run, to crumble, to prove his point about people knowing their place. Instead, Maya straightened her shoulders and took a step toward the piano. "Excuse me?" Webb's voice cracked slightly. "I said fine." Maya's voice was steady now, controlled. "You want a demonstration? You'll get one." The restaurant fell silent except for the soft whisper of her footsteps on marble as she walked toward the stage. Webb recovered quickly, his showman instincts kicking in. "Well, well, our little critic has some backbone after all." He turned to play to his audience, arms spread wide. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for what I'm sure will be a memorable performance. Cruel laughter rippled through the room, but Maya was no longer listening. She was approaching the piano like she was greeting an old friend, her trained eye automatically assessing its condition. The bench height was wrong for her. The lid was only half open, dampening the acoustic potential. The hired pianist had left sheet music scattered across the stand generic arrangements that wouldn't challenge a first-year student. Maya swept the music aside with one efficient motion. She didn't need sheet music, not for what she was about to do. She adjusted the bench with the precise movements of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, rotating the seat exactly 2 notches counterclockwise. "Oh, very professional," Webb called out, milking every moment. "Look at her, boys, she's got the whole ritual down pat. Wonder where she learned that? YouTube University?" His friends howled with laughter, but their amusement had an edge now. Something about Maya's quiet confidence was making them nervous. She tested the pedals with her foot, soft, sostenuto, sustain. All responsive, all perfectly maintained. The Steinway was in concert condition, tuned to perfection, waiting for someone who knew how to unleash its potential. Maya's hands hovered over the keys for just a moment, and in that moment she made her choice. Not just about what to play, but about who to be. Not the invisible waitress with student debt and a worthless degree. Not the failed dreamer serving soup to her betters. But Maya, Juilliard graduate, Carnegie Hall performer, who'd once made a room full of classical music professors weep with a single phrase from Rachmaninoff. "What's she waiting for?" someone whispered. "Probably trying to remember chopsticks," Webb answered, but his voice had lost some of its swagger. Something about the way Maya sat at that bench, the perfect posture, the professional hand position, was setting off alarm bells. Maya closed her eyes for just a moment, centering herself the way Professor Martinez had taught her. Find the music inside yourself first. Let it build until it has nowhere to go but out through your fingers. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer Maya the waitress. She was Maya the pianist. And she was about to remind everyone in this room what real music sounded like. Her hands descended to the keys. The first notes that emerged from the Steinway weren't what anyone expected. Not chopsticks, not Mary Had a Little Lamb, not some fumbling attempt at pop music that would confirm every cruel assumption in the room. Instead, Maya's fingers found the opening measures of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 in C minor, arguably the most technically demanding piece in the classical repertoire. The restaurant fell silent. Not the polite quiet of background music, but the stunned silence of recognition. Even people who couldn't tell Mozart from McDonald's knew those opening chords. They'd heard them in movies, in commercials, in the cultural consciousness that separates music from mere noise. Webb's smile faltered. Just slightly, just for a moment, but Maya caught it. She was 3 measures in, and already his expression was shifting from smug anticipation to confused uncertainty. This wasn't supposed to be happening. Waitresses didn't play Rachmaninoff. Failed dreamers didn't command Steinways like they were born to it. "What is she?" one of Webb's friends whispered. "Shut up," Webb hissed, but his voice had lost its theatrical boom. His eyes were fixed on Maya's hands, watching technical precision that shouldn't exist in someone wearing a restaurant uniform. Maya continued the exposition, her fingers dancing across the keys with the fluid confidence of someone who'd performed this piece dozens of times. In recital halls, in competitions, in front of audiences who understood what they were witnessing. The muscle memory was perfect, 18 months of suppression melting away like snow in sunlight. Around the restaurant, conversations died table by table. Silverware stopped clinking. Even the kitchen staff began emerging from behind swinging doors, drawn by music that transformed the space from mere restaurant to concert hall. "This is impossible," Webb muttered, loud enough for his table to hear but quiet enough to avoid the growing audience. "She's a waitress. She serves drinks. She..." His words trailed off as Maya transitioned into the piece's first major technical passage, her left hand providing thunderous bass support while her right hand spun delicate melodic lines 32 notes above. The hired pianist, forgotten in his corner, stopped pretending to pack up his music and simply stared. He recognized what he was hearing, not just technical competency, but artistry. The kind of musical interpretation that separated conservatory graduates from weekend hobbyists, professionals from pretenders. Webb's friend James, the one with actual musical training from his prep school days, leaned forward with growing alarm. "Marcus," he whispered urgently, "that's not easy music. That's—" "I know what it is," Webb snapped, but his voice carried a tremor of uncertainty. He was beginning to realize that his evening's entertainment had taken an unexpected turn, that the mouse he'd cornered might actually be a tiger. Maya reached the end of the exposition and paused, her hands lifting from the keys in the traditional silence before the orchestra would enter. But there was no orchestra tonight. Just her, the piano, and 30 tables of Manhattan's elite slowly realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. In that silence, Webb made his last desperate attempt to regain control. "Very nice," he called out, his voice too bright, too forced. "A bit ambitious for someone at your level, but very nice." He looked around for support from his audience, expecting them to join his mockery. Instead, he found faces full of concentration, confusion, and growing recognition. These were educated people, cultured people, people who'd attended galas and fundraisers and knew the difference between amateur hour and the real thing. And what they were hearing was very, very real. "She's actually," James started to say. "She's actually nothing." Webb cut him off, but desperation was creeping into his voice. "It's a party trick. Anyone can memorize a few measures." But even as he spoke, Maya's hands returned to the keys, and what emerged next silenced every skeptic in the room. The development section of Rachmaninoff's Second Concerto is where pretenders reveal themselves. It's where technique meets artistry, where muscle memory must yield to musical intelligence. It's where Maya, Juilliard graduate and Carnegie Hall performer, reminded herself exactly who she was. Her left hand thundered through cascading octaves while her right hand sang the melody with the kind of nuanced phrasing that takes years to master. The restaurant's acoustics, designed for conversation, suddenly revealed their hidden potential as Maya's music filled every corner with crystalline clarity. Webb's table had gone completely silent. His friends, moments ago laughing at the waitress's presumption, now sat transfixed by musical mastery they couldn't deny. The cruel jokes died on their lips. The snide comments evaporated in the face of undeniable talent. "Oh my God," someone whispered from another table. "She's incredible." "Is that really Rachmaninoff?" another voice asked. "The full concerto," James answered quietly, his prep school musical education finally useful. "She's playing the full bloody concerto." His voice carried a mixture of awe and disbelief that cut through Webb's remaining bluster like a blade. Maya was approaching the recapitulation now, the section where the opening themes return transformed by everything that came before. Her interpretation was mature, sophisticated, informed by years of study and performance that no amount of money could buy. And with every note, every phrase, every moment of musical perfection, Marcus Webb's carefully constructed evening of humiliation was crumbling around him. The predator was becoming the prey. The hunter was becoming the hunted. The status game was about to flip completely. What happened next would be talked about at Manhattan dinner parties for years to come. Maya's performance shifted into a realm that transcended mere technical proficiency. This was artistry unleashed, 18 months of suppressed passion flowing through her fingers like water through a broken dam. The Rachmaninoff wasn't just being played. It was being channeled, interpreted, transformed into something that made even the crystal chandeliers seem to hold their breath. Webb's face had gone pale. The confident smirk, the theatrical gestures, the casual cruelty, all of it evaporated as he watched a woman he'd dismissed as a failed dreamer command the piano like she was born to it. His friends sat frozen, their earlier laughter replaced by the uncomfortable realization that they were witnessing something far beyond their understanding. Maya reached the cadenza, the solo section where the pianist stands completely alone, unsupported by orchestra, naked before the audience with nothing but their skill and interpretation. It's the moment where pretenders are exposed and masters are revealed. Maya didn't just survive it, she soared. Her left hand provided a foundation of rolling arpeggios, while her right hand spun melodic lines that seemed to float above the rhythm like birds riding thermals. The technique was flawless, but more than that, it was musical. Every note served the larger phrase. Every phrase served the emotional arc. Every moment built toward something greater than the sum of its parts. Jesus Christ, James whispered, his prep school composure finally cracking. She's not just good. She's fucking brilliant. His profanity cut through the restaurant's refined atmosphere like a gunshot, but no one seemed to notice. Everyone was too transfixed by what they were hearing. The hired pianist had stopped even pretending to pack up. He stood against the wall, watching Maya with the mixture of awe and professional jealousy that only one musician can feel for another. He'd been playing piano for 20 years, had degrees and certifications and a steady gig at one of Manhattan's finest restaurants. But he'd never, not once, made music like this. Maya transitioned into the concerto's most technically demanding passage, her hands flying across the keyboard in patterns that seemed to defy physics. Octave runs, chromatic scales, thunderous chords that made the Steinway sing with power, all executed with the kind of precision that takes decades to develop. But it wasn't the technique that silenced the room. It was the music itself, the way Maya breathed life into Rachmaninoff's genius, the way she made every person in that restaurant feel something they couldn't name, but couldn't ignore. Webb tried one last desperate gambit. Okay, he called out, his voice cracking. Very impressive. You've made your point. You can stop now. But his words were swallowed by the music, insignificant protests against an artistic force that wouldn't be contained. Maya didn't stop. She was approaching the climax of the concerto, the moment where all the themes converge in an explosion of musical and emotional power. Her entire body was engaged now, shoulders moving with the rhythm, head tilting with the melodic lines, every muscle serving the music's demands. Around the restaurant, people began standing, not in protest, not in confusion, but in recognition. Table by table, Manhattan's elite rose to their feet as they realized they were witnessing something extraordinary, a performance that belonged in Carnegie Hall, not a restaurant. Who is she? Someone whispered. Where did she train? Another voice asked. That's conservatory-level playing, a woman murmured to her companion. Maybe even beyond that. The whispers spread through the room like wildfire, each observation driving home the magnitude of Webb's miscalculation. Maya reached the final movement, her interpretation building toward a crescendo that seemed to lift the ceiling of the restaurant itself. The music poured from the Steinway in waves of sound that transformed the space, making everyone present feel like they were part of something larger than themselves. Webb's remaining composure shattered completely. He slumped in his chair, the fight going out of him as he watched his evening's entertainment become his public humiliation. His friends avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their wine glasses, their phones, anything that wasn't the obvious reality of their complicity in what was supposed to be cruelty. The kitchen staff had fully emerged now, line cooks and dishwashers and prep chefs standing in doorways with expressions of wonder. They knew Maya as the quiet waitress who picked up extra shifts, who never complained, who treated everyone with respect regardless of their position. They'd never suspected she carried this inside her. Sergio, the floor manager, stood frozen near the wine station, his usual professional composure replaced by slack-jawed amazement. He'd hired Maya 18 months ago based on her references and work ethic. He'd never asked about her background, never wondered why someone with her intelligence was working for tips. Maya's performance built toward its inevitable climax, her hands moving with such speed and precision that they seemed to blur. The music filled every corner of the restaurant, spilled out onto the street, commanded attention from anyone within hearing. This was why she'd spent 10 years studying, why she'd practiced 8 hours a day through college, why she'd sacrificed social life and sleep and everything else for the chance to make music like this. Not for the money, not for fame, but for moments like this when the boundary between performer and music dissolved completely. The concerto's final measures approached like a storm breaking. Maya's left hand thundered through the bass register while her right hand sang the melody with crystalline clarity. Every technical element, dynamics, articulation, phrasing, rhythm came together in perfect synthesis. And then, in the space between one note and the next, something magical happened. The restaurant fell into complete, absolute silence. Not the nervous quiet of uncomfortable audience, but the reverent hush that follows truly transcendent art. Maya played the final chord, a massive resonant harmony that seemed to hang in the air long after her hands lifted from the keys. The Steinway's strings continued to vibrate, sending whispers of sound through the restaurant like echoes of something divine. The silence stretched. 1 second, 2 seconds. 5 seconds of absolute quiet as 30 tables of Manhattan's most sophisticated diners processed what they'd just experienced. Webb sat motionless, staring at Maya with an expression that cycled through confusion, embarrassment, and something that might have been the first stirrings of shame. His evening's entertainment had become his education, and the lesson was more brutal than any humiliation he could have devised. Maya remained seated at the piano, her hands resting quietly in her lap, her breathing controlled despite the physical demands of the performance. She looked exactly like what she was, a world-class pianist who had just reminded everyone in the room, including herself, of her true worth. The silence held for exactly 7 seconds. 7 seconds that contained multitudes, recognition, respect, the complete inversion of everything that had happened before. And then, like a dam breaking, the room erupted. The applause started with James. Webb's prep school friend, the one with actual musical training, began clapping with the slow, deliberate rhythm of someone who recognized artistry when he heard it. Within seconds, his applause was joined by another, then another, until the sound built into a thunderous ovation that shook the crystal chandeliers. Table by table, Manhattan's elite rose to their feet. Not politely, not reluctantly, but with the genuine enthusiasm reserved for truly exceptional performances. The woman in diamonds who'd demanded champagne refills was clapping with tears streaming down her cheeks. The tech moguls who'd been discussing market volatility were on their feet, their phones forgotten. Maya stood slowly, gracefully, and accepted the applause with the poise of someone who'd performed on the world's greatest stages. She nodded to the audience, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth, not triumphant, not vindictive, but quietly satisfied. Webb remained seated, isolated in a sea of standing ovation, his face cycling through expressions like a broken slot machine. Confusion, embarrassment, the dawning realization that he'd just publicly humiliated himself in front of New York's most influential people. James was still clapping, his voice full of wonder. That was Carnegie Hall level. That was better than most professionals I've heard. He turned to Webb with an expression of accusation. "Marcus, what the hell have you done?" But Webb couldn't answer. His carefully constructed evening of entertainment had collapsed into his own public disgrace. Every cruel word he'd spoken, every assumption he'd made, every moment of calculated humiliation now hung in the air like accusations. The applause continued for a full minute and eternity in restaurant time. Maya accepted it with grace, bowing slightly to acknowledge the recognition. When the clapping finally began to fade, she remained standing beside the piano, no longer the invisible waitress, but unmistakably the artist she'd always been. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the hushed restaurant, "thank you for listening." Her words were simple, dignified, free of any hint of the mockery she could have justifiably delivered. "Miss Maya," a voice called from across the room. An older woman at table 15, someone Maya recognized as a regular patron. "Where did you train?" The question hung in the air, and Maya knew that her answer would complete the evening's transformation. "Juilliard," she said simply. "Class of 2023. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water, creating ripples of recognition and disbelief. "Juilliard," James repeated, the word carrying weight. He looked at Webb with undisguised disgust. "She's a fucking Juilliard graduate, Marcus. And you had her serving you drinks." Webb finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. I had no idea." But his excuse sounded hollow even to himself. Ignorance wasn't a defense for cruelty, and everyone in the room knew it. "That's the problem," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness. "Talent doesn't care about your bank account." The words hit like a physical blow, elegant in their simplicity and devastating in their accuracy. Around the restaurant, conversations began in whispers that gradually grew bolder. "Did you hear what he said to her? How embarrassing for him. She handled that with such class." The court of public opinion was rendering its verdict, and it wasn't favorable to Marcus Webb. The older woman from table 15 stood up, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Ms. Maya, I'm Margaret Sinclair from the Sinclair Foundation. We fund emerging artists." Maya recognized the name one of New York's most prestigious arts foundations. "I'd very much like to speak with you about performance opportunities," Mrs. Sinclair continued. "Real ones. The kind that belong on proper stages." Her words carried implied criticism of the evening's events that made Webb sink even lower in his chair. Maya nodded graciously. "I'd be honored, Mrs. Sinclair." But her response was professional, not desperate. She'd found her dignity again, and it armored her against both cruelty and false rescue. Webb made one last pathetic attempt to regain control. "Look, I think we're all getting a bit carried away here." But his words were drowned by a chorus of disapproval from his own table. "Shut up, Marcus," James said flatly. "You've embarrassed yourself enough for one evening." The rebuke from his own friend was the final nail in Webb's social coffin. Maya looked at Webb for a long moment, not with anger or triumph, but with something that might have been pity. "Everyone has value beyond what you see," she said quietly. Her second quote-worthy moment of the evening, delivered with the grace that money couldn't buy and power couldn't fake. Webb's response was barely audible. "I'm sorry." The words seemed to cost him physically. "I was wrong. About everything." It wasn't much of an apology, but it was the first genuine thing he'd said all evening. Maya nodded, accepting the apology without absolving the behavior. "Thank you for the opportunity to play," she said with quiet irony that made several diners smile. She was offering him a graceful exit from his humiliation, more kindness than he deserved. The restaurant's general manager appeared at Maya's side, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. Ms. Maya, please know that you have our full support. Your job is secure, and... He paused, seeming to realize the inadequacy of his words. Actually, Mrs. Sinclair interjected, I believe Ms. Maya may have better opportunities ahead of her. The implication was clear. This evening had changed everything for Maya, opened doors that had been closed by economic necessity. Maya smiled, the first truly radiant expression of the evening. Not because of the opportunity, but because she'd remembered who she was. The performance hadn't just revealed her talent to the audience, it had revealed it to herself. As the evening wound down, patrons approached Maya one by one. Business cards were exchanged, phone numbers shared, opportunities discussed. The very people who'd watched her humiliation in silence were now competing to be associated with her talent. Webb remained at his table, abandoned by his friends, ignored by the staff, invisible in the way that Maya had been just hours before. The status game had flipped completely. The predator had become the outcast, the prey had become the prize. Maya collected her name tag, her server's book, the props of her disguise. But she moved differently now, with the confidence of someone who'd reclaimed their identity. Tomorrow, she might still be a waitress, but tonight, she was a pianist again, and that made all the difference. The last notes of conversation finally faded as Lumiere's patrons began their slow exodus into the Manhattan night. Maya stood by the piano, business cards fanned in her hand like a winning poker hand, each one representing a door that had been locked just hours before. Webb's table sat empty now, his friends having abandoned him one by one as they realized their association with the evening's cruelty would follow them to every dinner party for months to come. The billionaire himself had slipped out through the kitchen exit, avoiding the main dining room where his humiliation still hung in the air like expensive perfume. Sergio approached Maya with an expression she'd never seen before, respect mixed with something that might have been awe. Maya, we had no idea about your background, your training. He gestured helplessly at the piano, still trying to process what he'd witnessed. I never mentioned it, Maya replied simply. It didn't seem relevant to serving tables. But her voice carried no bitterness, just the calm acceptance of someone who'd made peace with her choices. The hired pianist, forgotten in all the evening's drama, packed up his generic sheet music with hands that shook slightly. He paused beside Maya, professional to professional. That was extraordinary, truly. I've never heard Rachmaninoff played with such... He searched for the right word. Heart, Maya suggested. Authority, he finished, and the word carried weight. He extended his hand and Maya shook it, one musician acknowledging another. Mrs. Sinclair waited patiently by the restaurant's entrance, her driver hovering nearby. When Maya approached, the elderly woman smiled with genuine warmth. My dear, I meant what I said about opportunities. The foundation has connections with Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall. Her voice trailed off as she studied Maya's face. I'll call you, Maya promised, slipping the woman's card into her pocket with careful reverence. This wasn't just a business card. It was a lifeline back to the world she'd lost. As the restaurant emptied, Maya found herself alone with the Steinway one last time. She traced her fingers along its keys without pressing them, saying goodbye to a friend she might not see again for a while. Tomorrow would bring decisions, changes, the possibility of reclaiming her true identity. But tonight? Tonight she'd remembered who she was. 6 months later, Maya walked onto the stage at David Geffen Hall, her burgundy concert gown catching the lights like liquid fire. The sold-out audience of Lincoln Center fell silent as she approached the Steinway Model D, the same model she'd commanded that night at Lumiere, but now in its proper setting. The program read, Maya, from Service to Symphony, a concert series funded by the Sinclair Foundation for emerging artists who'd overcome extraordinary circumstances. Tonight's performance would be broadcast live, her Rachmaninoff interpretation reaching millions who'd never heard her story. In the front row sat Mrs. Sinclair, beaming with the pride of a mentor watching her protégé soar. Beside her, unexpectedly, sat Marcus Webb. He'd contacted Maya 3 months after that fateful evening, not with excuses or attempts at redemption, but with a simple request. Could he help? His offer had been characteristically grandiose: fund her entire career, set up a foundation in her name, buy her a concert hall. Maya had declined with the same grace she'd shown that night, but she'd accepted something smaller and more meaningful: his commitment to fund full scholarships for working-class music students at Juilliard. The Webb Scholarship Program now supported 12 students annually, each one chosen not for connections or privilege, but for talent and determination. Maya served on the selection committee, ensuring that other dreamers wouldn't have to choose between art and survival. As Maya settled at the piano, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The student loans were paid off. The Sinclair Foundation's first grant had taken care of that. Her parents sat in the third row, her mother clutching a program with Maya's photo on the cover, tears already streaming down her cheeks. The spotlight narrowed to encompass just Maya and the piano, the rest of the hall falling into dramatic darkness. She raised her hands to the keys, and in that moment of suspension, she felt the presence of everyone who'd believed in her talent when she'd stopped believing in herself. Professor Martinez, who'd called her the morning after videos of her Lumiere performance went viral. Sergio, who'd given her the time off she needed to audition and practice. Even the hired pianist from that night, who'd sent her a simple note: "Thank you for reminding us why we fell in love with music." Maya began with the same piece that had changed everything: Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. But tonight, she wasn't playing alone. The New York Philharmonic surrounded her, dozens of world-class musicians ready to support her journey through one of classical music's greatest masterpieces. The opening measures filled the hall with the same power they'd commanded in that restaurant, but here they belonged. Here, they could breathe and soar and reach their full potential, unconfined by the limitations of cruelty or circumstance. As Maya played, she thought about the other servers still working in restaurants across the city, the other dreamers still choosing between passion and paycheck. Her story had become a beacon for them, proof that talent could triumph over circumstance, that dignity could overcome humiliation. The concerto built toward its climax, and Maya felt the familiar surge of joy that came from making music at the highest level. This was why she'd endured the rejection letters, the financial stress, the 18 months of invisible servitude. For moments like this, when music became transcendent. The final chord rang out across Lincoln Center, and for a heartbeat, the hall held its breath. Then came the applause, not the shocked recognition of that night at Lumiere, but the sustained appreciation of an audience that had come specifically to celebrate her artistry. As Maya stood to bow, she caught sight of Webb in the front row. He was clapping with genuine enthusiasm, his face showing none of the arrogance that had defined their first encounter. Their eyes met briefly, and he nodded a gesture of respect between equals, perhaps the first honest moment they'd ever shared. The standing ovation continued for 5 minutes, but Maya knew this was just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that excellence knows no boundaries. If you enjoyed Maya's incredible journey from invisible waitress to Lincoln Center star, you'll love Beat Stories, where extraordinary people reveal their hidden talents and change the world. Subscribe now for more inspiring tales of triumph over adversity, and discover the remarkable stories hiding in plain sight all around us. Sometimes the best lessons come from unexpected teachers. Music gave me my voice back, but it was the silence that taught me how to use it.